Gotta let it breathe while we get the Facebook groups in here. Facebook 1, Facebook 2, making sure that the right ones. And save changes. Gotta wait for a couple green check marks here. Got them both. Good evening and welcome into another episode of the Development Divers. I am your host, Erick Trickel, and joining me as always is Lance Sanderson. Lance, man, how are you doing today?
Doing all right. It's been a really long day today. Got a really long day tomorrow, but I'm here. I'm having a lot of fun. Ready for a wonderful Friday evening, talking about the Broncos and obviously the 2025 NFL football schedule was released on Tuesday. Seen a couple shows breaking everything down today. We're going to go into a little bit of the good, the bad, and the ugly here. But I'm excited to be here, man. It's again, it's always great to wind down on Friday, have some fun talking Broncos football, and get away from the real world for just a little bit, man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I've been spending my time, between writing and everything like that. As the school year winds down, we're almost all done with the little one's schoolwork. I'm a
Nice.
homeschooler, so have more free time. I've been enjoying a few video games, a few different ones that have been getting a lot of hype recently, and I'm really enjoying that and enjoying my downtime. But yeah, you're right. The Broncos schedule released, and there's definitely a lot of takeaways that you can come from it. We're going to dig into the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. What are some good things with the schedule, bad things, and of course, the ugly stuff of it. But before we get into that, we're going to say hello to some people in the chat. We have David Youngkin coming in saying the ugly players get injured more than last season. That would definitely be ugly. The bad would be Bo starts the season like he did last season. That would be really bad. And the good is that we start the season with a win. That would be fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And we have MBLE test preps, and I'm here to party. Ernie Mason, go Broncos country. Only go Bo Nix for 6. We got Papa Bear coming in with a good evening, Broncos country. Hashtag 13 and 4. Thank you, Papa Bear, for the super chat. We appreciate that. Jason Bonney coming in saying good evening, Broncos country, DB for life. And Michael Ronquillo coming in saying good evening, Eric and Lance on the Dove Valley Divers. Go Bo Broncos. And we have Ernie Mays also coming in over on Facebook saying hello, Eric and Lance. Go Broncos country. Only Bo Nix for 6. So schedule released. Is there anything, before we get into the topic conversation, is there anything like really surprises you with how the schedule was structured or anything? Because to me, it stinks. The only thing that surprises me is the opening start of the season because it's making the meet and greet date a little bit difficult. We're still trying to figure that out. But other than that, it's pretty. It is what it is. Kind of schedule structure.
Yeah, I think that the way it's kind of structured, it works out in a couple different ways for the Broncos. We're going to get into a lot more of that, but the one big thing is the opening of this schedule is a little bit rough. And I guess we could just dive right in on this one. It's one of Eric has an article up at milehighhuddle.com talking about this very topic essentially. And the first thing that really sticks out to me when I'm looking at this is 4 out of your first 6 games are on the road. Like that's a brutal stretch to start the season. Like that's a pretty ugly stretch, to tell you the truth. Like, fortunately, you got some easier teams in there. You've got a couple winnable games early in the schedule. You've obviously got the game at home against the Titans, at the Colts. You get the Jets game in London. Like, the schedule, the way it breaks down is it seemingly looks to be pretty difficult, but the way that if you take it in by quarters of a season, it's actually pretty manageable for the most part.
Yeah, it is definitely, and I do like one of the best things is that they have that opening game against the rookie quarterback. It's one of those things that's always nice, always good to have, especially when you look at the Titans roster overall. It's not a very good roster. They lack weapons. They lack offensive line, even though they have a couple good players and they went and got Dan Moore, Lloyd Cushenberry's there. They have some players, but it's still a weak link for them. Injuries are a major concern with them, but no weapons, and the defense is missing a lot of pieces. So overall, I think it's a pretty safe bet to say that the Broncos at least should be walking out with the win week 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you. And honestly, they should be walking out at a 2-0 record. And this is my first good point that I want to bring to you. Obviously, we talked about the Titans with the rookie quarterback, but then you got the Colts on the road. Obviously, going to Indianapolis, the Colts played the Broncos pretty well last season. Obviously, it was 13-10. I think the Colts were leading that game going into the fourth quarter. And then you get the big Nick Bonito, what was actually a fumble return for a touchdown on a throwback pass, technically a pick six, fumble return, whatever you want to call it. The Broncos actually managed to win that game, score 21 unanswered points to beat the Colts at home. This year, they're going on the road. And to me, this is one of the bigger things here. This game against the Colts, who's playing quarterback there? Is it Anthony Richardson? Is it Daniel Jones? you still have a viable option of beating both of those two players. But with Daniel Jones and his at least his ability to throw the football, with Anthony Richardson, it's a wild card, man. So to me, I think you have the game against Tennessee, again, like you said, a young team, not necessarily the most talented team, but that running game against Indianapolis with Jonathan Taylor, with Anthony Richardson, and even with Daniel Jones, if he is the starting quarterback there, that could be a tough matchup. But I think you start the season off 2-0. That's a great way to get your season in 2025 started off, man.
Yeah, and before we really get into the conversation, since Lance missed the bad segue here, we do have a presenting sponsor that we got to go through real quick.
My bad. Sorry about that. Guys, spring is in full bloom on DraftKings Casino. New offers and 2 promos are sprouting up daily. Right now, new players can play $5 on anything and get 350 casino spins instantly on featured slot games. Download the app and sign up with code MileHighPod. Take the featured slot for a spin and explore thousands of others in DraftKings game library.
That's right. Check back daily to claim the hottest offers and promos on DraftKings Casino, and don't forget our code MileHighPod. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. 21 plus, physically present in Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, West Virginia only. Void in Connecticut and Ontario. Eligibility restrictions apply. New customers only. Non-withdrawable. Casino spins valid for featured game only and expire in 168 hours. See terms at casino.draftkings.com/promos. Ends on June 15th, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. That is ends June 15th, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. And thank you, DraftKings, for the sponsorship. Now, getting into it here. Well, before we actually get into it, let's get a couple people from the chat. We have Michael Rico coming in saying Dallas Cowboys or the New York Giants are two of the meet and greet for the Broncos country. It does look like it'll either be that week 7 or week 8 game. There is still some conversations going, trying to make schedules work with, different people on the staff, seeing who can go there, but it does seem to be one of those 2 weeks. Still discussions going on. And Zachary Hintz coming in saying, good evening, Eric and Lance, checking in from Northwest Minnesota. I'm excited for our schedule this year. Wish I can go to game 1 as my brother is a Titans fan, but it's a day after my wedding. MHH for life, Knicks for 6, go Broncos. Well, is the wedding really that important? I mean, it's a day after. No, yeah. All kidding aside, congratulations on getting married. I hope you have a wonderful day, and hopefully the Broncos, help you enjoy that celebration even more by beating the Titans and giving you a little bit extra that you can rub into something for your brother. But it definitely would be cool to, that would be a cool game to go with your brother if that's what you're meaning with that. You being a Broncos fan, him being a Titans fan, but it's all understandable. And thank you, Zachary, for joining us. We appreciate it. Now, Lance, getting into this, as you said earlier, I have an article up on the good, the bad, and the ugly for the Broncos schedule. It's my takeaways. I have 3 for each of them. Go to milehighhuddle.com if you guys want to check that out. For the show tonight, we're going to be keeping it with what Lance's takes are. And I'll have some conversations, some comments and stuff off of that. But we are going to have to keep it a little bit short. So we got to get through this in about 20 minutes. So if you guys have any burning questions, make sure you get them in. And as always, super chats or stars are the best way to make sure we get to your question as well. So Lance, as we jump into this, what is one of the good things in your eyes with this Broncos schedule?
Yeah, sorry, I missed your segue there. I didn't even hear you say the keyword. That's my bad. But anyways, like I said, you can get off to a hot start. And I believe it's NFL.com has an article up talking about how the Broncos are predicted to get off to a hot start. Again, the game against Tennessee at home to open up the season. That's a very winnable matchup. Again, on the road at Indianapolis, depending on what that running game looks like in Indianapolis, that offensive line, they got some tweaks going on up there up front for the Colts. But again, who's starting at quarterback? Is it Anthony Richardson or is it Daniel Jones? If it's Richardson, I think the Broncos have a better chance of winning that football game because he isn't quite as adept throwing the football. Not to say that Daniel Jones is really an elite level passer of the football, but those are 2 winnable games to get your season started off right. And then you go on the road at Los Angeles. And this is going to be a big matchup right at the beginning. It's going to test your mettle as a franchise. I think this is actually a good thing for the Broncos to go on the road at a division rival early in the season and get a tough game out of the way right off the bat, man. The first 3 weeks of this season is actually a really good stretch for Denver.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to hate on the first 3 weeks. They're fine. I think that going into Indianapolis, it's always tougher, and that defense that they have, and they've built up that secondary quite a bit, is a slight concern for this Broncos offense. And then always there's the what are you going to get out of whoever their quarterback is? Like Anthony Richardson, despite all the comments about him, and I've said it before that it's time to end that experiment for Indianapolis, there are still those few moments where he has that are just great because of just the natural talent that he has. Just hasn't been able to put it all together. Daniel Jones has some of those moments. So either quarterback, there's still those moments that you have to worry about for the Broncos, but their offensive line is questionable. It's not the offensive line that it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
They have plenty of weapons. There's no question about that. But there's enough there with both of these quarterbacks that if Denver can win and beat the offensive line and generate pressure, they should be able to have a pretty easy time. And then the Titans already talked about that. Questions about the offensive line, questionable weapons. The defense is questionable outside of a couple players here and there. And then Cam Ward, it's his first game against a tough defense. Like it's on the road. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a tough one. It would be pretty disappointing if the Broncos don't start the season 2-0. And then going into the Chargers game, that is one that it's nice to have that one out of the way, especially when you are likely to have the Chargers and the Broncos competing for that second AFC West spot. That can help provide some clarity there until the season finale. But it's still also one of those things too of, let me pull up the schedule here on screen as I forgot to do that already. It's on the road and it's back-to-back road games. That's where my issue is over these first few games is 2 on the road, 1 at home. So it's a good thing, don't get me wrong, especially those first 2 weeks. But going to Indianapolis and then going back the other way to take on the Los Angeles Chargers, that kind of ruins the goodness of those first 3 weeks for me. But Lance, what's another good thing that you have about this Broncos roster?
Honestly, it sucks because you're going to go to London to go play the Jets, and you have to come back home and play the New York Giants. But that 3-game stretch right there is another stretch of winnable football games going against the New York Jets with that rebuilt offensive line. Justin Fields at quarterback, that's not necessarily a very scary proposition, although the Justin Fields did manage to beat you with the Pittsburgh Steelers and that vaunted defense that they have there. The Jets defense is pretty capable there, but going across the pond to go to London, strange things happen over there. It's a winnable game. You come back home, you have another winnable game against the New York Giants, a team that picked obviously third overall this year. So you have 2 winnable back-to-back games, and then this game against the Dallas Cowboys, which that's a toss-up game to me. I think it's a winnable game, especially because if I remember correctly, yes, you are at home, so you have back-to-back home games against the Giants and the Dallas Cowboys. That could be a 3-0 stretch for this Broncos team right after you get through the gauntlet that is the Chargers, the Bengals, and the Eagles. And that Eagles game being in Philadelphia, that's a brutal, brutal football game. So you get a little bit of reprieve, the traveling from Philadelphia to London, coming back home without a bye week to then take on the Giants and the Cowboys. That stretch right there, it may not be perfect, but it is at least a good stretch of football to get you into the big-time meat of this schedule.
Yeah, we have Zachary Hens coming and saying, what do you all think our toughest opponent is this year? I think it's the Eagles, and we're going to sweep the Chiefs and Raiders. Prediction is 14-3. But I'd like to hear y'all's take on this. Thank you for the wedding wishes. And the Miss did say I can go to Arrowhead on Christmas Day. Go Broncos. Well, I'm gonna jump ahead here. I think one of the ugly things for this schedule is, and it relates to Zachary's comment, are both Chiefs games.
Mm-hmm.
First, I hate Christmas Day games. I don't care what sport it is. I hate Christmas Day games. But that is because of my own personal feelings about Christmas, and that's time with family, and sports takes that away from the athletes. And so I have issues with that. But the bigger issue here is that you have, at least it's a mini bye week for the first game, that week 11 matchup for the Broncos playing the Raiders. But the Raiders always play the Broncos physical. And now with Pete Carroll, that's even more physicality that they're going to bring. And the Chiefs are coming off a bye, where Andy Reid is 22-4 in his career, coming off a bye. That is a really tough game. But to answer Zachary Hens's question about what is the toughest opponent this year, I think, is the Eagles. Mm-hmm. The toughest game is the Kansas City Chiefs on Christmas Eve. It's a short week for it. At least the Chiefs aren't coming off a bye week, but it being the holidays, and a lot of players, when they play on the holiday, they either do it beforehand. In this case, since it's a Thursday night, the Broncos will probably do it afterwards, take advantage of that mini bye week before the Chargers game. Mm-hmm. But there can be a lot on this game. It's on the road on Christmas Day. And I think that there's a chance we come into this game where the Broncos, if they win, they could take over the first seed of the division. Mm-hmm. because I'm just not overly sold on the Chiefs with the schedule that they have and the roster they have being, by this point having cemented the division. Entirely possible. I'm just not seeing it. And so that to me is the toughest game, but the Eagles are definitely the toughest opponent because going into with the Eagles, that's an early morning East Coast game. Yep. And the Broncos are terrible early morning East Coast games on Sunday.
Yep. I'm right there with you on that. And going back to the Christmas game, at least it is a night game. But the problem is Arrowhead in December and January is one of the toughest places to play in all of the NFL. It doesn't matter, just period. The weather outside is probably going to be cold. More likely can be some snow on the ground that day. Obviously, Christmas away from your family. That's just a crappy situation all the way around. To me, that is absolutely 100% the toughest game that the Broncos have on their schedule this year. Yeah. It is the road game at Kansas City on Christmas Day. So that's the big ugly for me. And honestly, to segue into one of my bigger ugly parts of the season is from what is that week? Let me pull this up a little bit bigger here. Week 10 through the end of the season, you have 5 divisional games in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks of the season. That's a brutal stretch. Then you also have the Green Bay Packers in there and the Washington Commanders on the road on Sunday Night Football. That stretch of football right there is incredibly, incredibly difficult. Like you said with the Raiders, man, like Pete Carroll, the physicality, Ashton Genty, that offensive line got a little bit of a boost this offseason as well. They're starting to build at least a quality offense up there, and they're going to pound the rock, man. So to me, with the run defense, and this is something that you kind of alluded to a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about after the draft, the biggest remaining holes on the roster. And one of the biggest ones that you had was the lack of adding on a 2-gapping nose tackle. When you go up against a run game like what the Raiders have, and then again in Week 18 with the playoffs very much on the line, maybe even a division title on the line here, Omarion Hampton and Jim Harbaugh and that running game that they're going to bring from the Los Angeles Chargers, that stretch of football there is absolutely freaking brutal, man.
Yeah, it's rough, and I gotta say, I absolutely hate what the NFL did with the schedule for the Kansas City Chiefs. They really made it a pretty easy one for them, which is always frustrating to see. Mm-hmm. It's definitely one of those things of they're trying to do what they can to, help them win, for lack of a better way to put it, with the way it is set up, with the way they have the games, because they go on the road to Buffalo, then they have the bye week, and then it's on the road to Denver. But that's beside the point. We're here to talk about the Broncos schedule. So, Lance, we've got the good. What is one of your bad things with the way this Broncos schedule is set up to be?
Well, I alluded to it a little bit ago, talking about going to London and then coming back home to face the Giants. You're on the road at Philadelphia, then you fly across the ocean to go to London, and then you come right back on. It's not necessarily a short week, but it's going to be what seemingly is a shorter week because you have a long travel day on Monday just to be able to get back home. So you have a shorter week going up against the New York Giants, and that is a potential return of Russell Wilson. Not to say that Russell Wilson is overly scary as a quarterback, but maybe he does have that chip on his shoulder. Maybe he does have a little bit of hurt feelings towards the Denver Broncos. He'd never say it publicly, but you never know. It's Russell freaking Wilson here. He could hit you with some moonballs over the top. They have a quality player in Malik Neighbors. It's going to be a tough matchup. I know Pat Surtain, obviously the best cornerback in football, but still, Malik Neighbors is a damn good football player, man. So you've got Abdul Carter coming off the edge. They still have Kayvon Thibodeau there as well. So like that pass rush is going to be a little bit daunting alongside of Dexter Lawrence coming up the middle at the nose tackle position against Luke Wattenberg, who's one of my bigger question marks for this season. So that's kind of a bad stretch of football. I said it was good because of the opponents you're playing, but the fact you have to go on the road twice, one in London, then come back home on that short week, that's a pretty bad stretch of games there, even though it can be good.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, one of the things that really it's tough with this one because the bye week 12 isn't a bad thing. In fact, to me, week 12, week 10, 11, 12 is ideal. Mm-hmm. It's not too early in the season. It's not too late, but you have an overseas game, and anytime you don't have a bye week after an overseas game, it's always a little bit frustrating, mm-hmm. A little annoying. And it's one of those things that I would like to see the NFL correct and fix, but it is what it is. At least it's not London to take on the Jets and then going on the road, or being at home against the Chiefs, the Raiders, or the Chargers after going to London.
Yep.
At least it is one of the worst rosters in football that could be better, and they do have some talent sitting around, but that offensive line is still a complete mess.
Mm-hmm.
And Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, Jackson Dart, whoever the quarterback is, Denver should be able to create issues for them with their ability to get pressure up front. Mm-hmm. So I'm fine with it, but I definitely understand why it's one of the bad things. So what's the other bad thing that you see with this roster or with the schedule?
Right there, coming in from week 9, 10, and 11. Houston, I believe that game is on the road. Yes, at Houston. Then you have the Raiders at home, and then Kansas City at home. That you have the AFC South division winner, probably going to win the division again this year. CJ Stroud, yeah, he took a step back last season, but we'll see what happens with that roster. I mean, they went out and they got, what receiver did they get? Pickens, right? Wasn't it George Pickens?
George Pickens went to the Cowboys.
The Cowboys. I swear they brought in another receiver in Houston. I'm drawing a blank right now. Guys, I got home about 10 minutes before the show and didn't really get a chance to do a whole lot of preparation, so I apologize for that. But at this stretch of football here, you've got the AFC South division winner, back-to-back rivalry games. You're ending that stretch against Kansas City in November. That game's at home, but that's going to be a tough stretch of football for the Broncos. Not necessarily the worst thing in the world, but that's a 3-game stretch. Yeah, you got maybe a 3-game stretch against the Jets, the Giants, and the Cowboys. You can win 3 in a row. You could very easily lose 3 in a row right after that to put yourself back to 500.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely hear where you're coming from because it stinks. I mean, you're on the road against the Texans, then it's a short week to play the Raiders at home, and then it's a mini bye week, but you're playing the Kansas City Chiefs coming off a bye week. It's definitely a bit rough there for over that. And the receiver you're thinking of is Jaden Higgins in the draft.
Yep.
And so let's get down to it before we get out of here. Only got a few minutes left here. What are your two uglies real quick?
Well, like I said, I hit that one week 10 to close out the season with 5 divisional games. That's just an absolutely brutal stretch that's about as ugly as it can get. Really, that's probably the ugliest thing about this. Fortunately, you have a handful of home games in there. That game against Washington on the road, Sunday Night Football, coming out of the bye week. Jaden Daniels, Dan Quinn, that offense, they're just seemingly clicking. They added a bunch to the defense this offseason as well. That team's scary for a team that was just in the NFC Championship game and actually kind of hung around there for a little bit against the Philadelphia Eagles. That team is very scary. In a big primetime game, we definitely got to see what Bo Nix is capable of throughout the season to go toe-to-toe with the Washington Commanders. But that final 8-game stretch is just horrendous. That is the ugliest stretch of football I think I've seen for the Broncos in quite some time on a scheduling standpoint. Like, you get the Raiders twice, the Chiefs twice. You need to have that game at home against the Chargers to potentially seal up a playoff spot. Like, it's crunch time. And then don't forget the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love. They were in the playoffs last year as well. So you've got just an amazing stretch of football there. It's going to be great games, but it's going to be a very brutal stretch too.
Yeah, we have Jason Bonnie saying, once again, that stretch from week 7 to 12 has only one road game. That's an advantage, not a disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
If they were all Sunday afternoon games or Sunday morning games, either way, I would agree with you. But you have a short week before the Raiders, and then you have the Chiefs coming off a bye week. That balances out, that erases the advantage that you have of having, 4 home games out of 5 games.
Yep.
So everything goes into it. It's a short week for the Raiders, and the Raiders always play Denver tough in Denver, and the Kansas City Chiefs coming off a bye week where Andy Reid is 22-4. Yeah, those aren't advantages there. Now, I'm going to break this down here, Lance. You asked me beforehand if I'm going to have you give a record prediction, and I 100% am. But I'm going to break it down here. First 4 games, right? Titans, Colts, Chargers, Bengals. What do you think is a worst case scenario record for them coming out of it? I think worst case, it's anything under 2 wins. If they're 2-2 after that, I'm content.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, it's 3-1, but 2-2, content. 1-3, it's time to have a little bit of concern.
I'm right there with you. Like obviously the Titans game at home to open the season, that seems to be the scheduled win out of the first four. The Colts on the road, that's always a tough game. Denver doesn't necessarily play well in Indianapolis. It just historically they have not been able to overcome Lucas Oil Stadium, whether it was Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck. It doesn't really matter. Like Jacoby Brissett a couple of years ago with when Vic Fangio was the head coach, they just haven't seemingly been able to win on the road at Indianapolis for the last 20 years. So that game's a toss-up. Then again, you got that Chargers game on the road early. That game's gonna be tough because again, Jim Harbaugh, Omarion Hampton, in that running game. That defense is a fairly formidable opponent as well. Like that's a tough game. And then you have Monday Night Football against Joe Burrow and the Bengals. And yeah, you hung on the road last season. Was that a Sunday Night Football game? I believe. I know it was a night game, but you have enough horses, especially defensively, to hang with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and all the offensive weapons they have there. But it's Joe freaking Burrow on Monday Night Football. Like if you come out of that stretch 1-3 and you don't steal that game in Indianapolis, I'm really, really concerned.
All right, now going up to the next 4 games. That's at Philadelphia, in London against the Jets, Giants, and Cowboys at home. After 8 games, I think for me, 4-4 is the bare minimum you want from the Broncos here. Ideally, it's 5-3.
Yeah.
I think that you can handle if you start 2-2 with a loss to the Chargers and loss to the Bengals. If you lose to the Eagles and then beat the Jets, the Giants, and the Cowboys, I think you're in a pretty good spot. Although having 3 of those 4 games being NFC opponents does stink a little bit. But I think 4-4 is the bare minimum you want, but 5-3 is ideal. It puts you in a really good spot for the last half of the season.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Obviously, that game at Philadelphia is the one you got to have really circled here as the toughest matchup. Again, it's the best opponent you're going to be playing. It's probably the best roster in all of the NFL. Actually, I don't think I think it's far and away the best roster in the NFL as it currently stands. So that game is going to be obviously really tough. But then again, you get the Jets on the road in London, you get the Giants at home, the Cowboys at home. All 3 of those teams picking in the top 12 of the NFL draft this last season. Questions across the roster all the way around. Dak Prescott, that game against Dallas, depending on what his health looks like and how he plays in that game, that's going to be a tough matchup, but I think it's a winnable one. I'm actually low-key a little bit scared about the Giants, to tell you the truth, because of coming back from London. It's like I said, it's a shorter week. It's potentially Russell Wilson returning to Denver to cram it in your cram hole, or however you want to say it. That game low key scares me a little bit. And then if you can't go out and perform against the Dallas Cowboys and the triple threat of options they have with Jake Ferguson, they still have CeeDee Lamb. They just got George Pickens. Like there's a viable passing threat there for the Dallas Cowboys. I like the Broncos in that matchup because of what they did with the secondary, bringing in Jahdae Barron in the draft, going and getting Talanoa Hufanga, like Dre Greenlaw. It's a good matchup for the Broncos there. But at the same time, I could see them dropping one of, if not both, of those 2 games just based on how the schedule falls.
Yeah, Jason, I see your super chat. We'll get to it here in just a minute. I want to finish this up, then we'll grab that. So now the next 4 weeks, right? So we have the at Houston Texans, at home against the Raiders on the short week, at home against the Kansas City Chiefs with them coming off their bye, then the bye week, and then at Washington. For me, 7 wins. At this point, 7 wins is where you want to be.
Yeah.
Where is it for you? What is that? What is that record? We're running out of time, so we don't need, game by game breakdown matchups here. But just quick, what is that record that you need to see Denver here at this point in the season?
I would like to see him have 7 wins and steal that game against the Texans. But if you're at 6 wins, given the fact that you have the Texans and the Chiefs there, tough matchups for you. If you're at 6, I think you're still okay. But at the same time, I want 7 wins going into the bye week this season.
Yeah, 6 wins after the Washington Commanders. It's still fine because you still have 4 of those final 5 games being AFC opponents, including 3 divisional games. So it's still fine. If you can win all those, that can get you to 11-6, and that probably puts you in a pretty good spot for the playoffs here. And then to close out the season, at the Las Vegas Raiders, home against Green Bay, home against the Jaguars, the Christmas Day game, short week against Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City, and then the up in the air game to close out the season against the Chargers. So, Lance, looking at his full schedule, where do you think the Broncos end up? What's your record prediction?
11-6. I think 11-6 is a very attainable goal for this Broncos team, because if you do steal that game against the Texans, you get all three of the games against the Jets, the Giants, and the Cowboys. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You 8 maybe against Washington, 9 against Green Bay, 10 against the Jacksonville Jaguars, maybe steal a game against the Raiders. That's 11. And then you're looking at Kansas City, who may or may not have the division wrapped up. They might not be looking for seeding or anything like that. Maybe you steal a game against the Chargers. Like 11 wins is probably where I think is the most optimistic view. You definitely can get 12, though. If you steal one against the Raiders, you steal another one against the Chargers, you get maybe one against Kansas City. That's 12 wins right there, dude. Like I think 12 wins, you're right there at maybe the 5th seed in the AFC playoffs, maybe even pushing for the AFC West crown. Like 12 wins is attainable. I think 11 is probably the most realistic, though.
I disagree with you. I think
Okay.
13-4, 12-5 is entirely possible.
Oh, I don't
I
disagree
think you're
with that.
overrating the Houston Texans quite a bit and the Washington Commanders, personally.
Okay.
When I look at the schedule, I see 3 for sure losses. And I say for sure because I have another article coming out that's talking about their chances to win, and it's just taking a lot. And obviously, injuries are such a big factor here and big variable that you can't calculate for until they happen. But with the additions made, losses happened, and all that stuff like that, I think that you're pretty much looking at losses against the Eagles in both Chiefs games. Mm-hmm. But I think every other one is very much in the realm of possibility for the Broncos. Mm-hmm. Commanders game, I was pretty much a 50-50, giving a slight advantage to the Commanders with it being a home game. Houston Texans, I actually, even though it's a Houston Texans home game, I actually have it as a slight, if I remember right, a slight advantage for the Broncos. It might be it's a 50-50 game with the boost I give for home field giving it to Houston, but basically 50-50. I don't think Green Bay is that good of a team. Jordan Love is fine. I think he's overrated as a quarterback. I think their defense is really overrated, and I think that they just don't have great weapons. So I think 13-4 or 12-5 is entirely possible. And we have Jason Bonney coming in as it relates to this. Says, thanks for your hard work, Eric and Lance. 12-5 offense pushes 30 points per game and defense finishes top 10 minimum. The division is in reach. Mm-hmm. I'm right there with you, Jason. I think the division very much is in reach. I think the Chiefs, who the Chiefs play isn't the best. You know, they have the game they have the Buffalo Bills, they have the Eagles, they have the Ravens. They have the 2 Broncos games, which I wouldn't be surprised if Denver did steal one away, but I still think I would be a little bit surprised if Denver stole one away. The Chargers, they have 2 of the Chargers games. I wouldn't be surprised if Chargers steal one of those, is what I meant to say. Mm-hmm. So I think the division is very much in grasp, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get to that Week 17 Christmas Day game, and that is the game that decides the division between the Broncos and the Chargers, or the Broncos, the Chargers, and the Chiefs. All 3 teams I could see competing for it. Mm-hmm. I think the AFC West is going to be much better this year than it was last year. I think that the Las Vegas Raiders definitely raised the floor of the room a little bit. And yeah, Kansas City also plays Detroit too. Yeah, they definitely have some rough games on there. Yep. So I think all of it points to that the Broncos, I'm not saying they will win the division, but I wouldn't be surprised. I think 12-5 now is kind of where I'm at for the minimum with the Broncos schedule. But guys, before we get out of here, we're going to say hello to Joe Manick saying 9-10 wins. Todd on Surf, 8 wins at the bye would be great. That would be fantastic to have 8 wins at the thing. Michael Ronquillo saying 11 wins, 6 losses for the Broncos 2025 NFL season. Peter Milton, other than Mahomes, are the Chiefs really that good? No, they're not. Their defense is good because of the scheme, and they have some good players at key positions. But their offensive line is a mess outside of Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. Their offensive weapons are laughable. So I don't think that they're as big of a threat. I just think Patrick Mahomes just raises the bar for them or the floor with them so much. Since I was more impressed with free agent signings and draft picks of the Chargers and Raiders, they'll give a loss to the Chiefs. So can the Broncos. I'm not too far off with you there either. Paul, of course, saying 17-0. That's what it is until it isn't, right? 17-0 until they lose a game. William Kettle saying the Broncos might win 13 games to scare me. Hey, I can be optimistic about the Broncos every now and then, right? It's possible. I'm not always the pessimistic, negative guy. I can be positive. But no, I just really like what the Broncos have done. I like the way things look, and even though this is a tough schedule, I don't think their opponents are as scary as Lance does, because Lance is a hater. He hates the Broncos.
Hold on. Okay, let me clarify some of my comments here. A big reason why I say 11 wins is probably where I think that they're going to land. I don't want to say skeptical, but cautiously optimistic about Bo Nix. I still need to see more. We saw linear growth from him throughout the season. I've praised him multiple different times. We're still going into year 2. He's still got a lot to show and a lot to prove. There are some tough opponents in there. And I'm talking about Houston, talking about Washington, talking about Green Bay, because a lot of times when you're just at face value, evaluating a schedule and stuff like that, who's a better quarterback? Is CJ Stroud a better quarterback than Bo Nix is? More than likely, yes. Is Jaden Daniels a better quarterback than Bo Nix is? It's a coin flip there, but I'd still probably give the nod to Jaden Daniels. And then Jordan Love, is he a better quarterback than Bo Nix is? Probably. I mean, we'll see what happens as Bo continues to grow. So that's why I'm talking about that matchup, those 3 matchups specifically, as like turning points for this franchise. Can Bo Nix go out there and outduel those 3 quarterbacks based on what the Texans have on defense? Sure, absolutely. I think he can, because the Broncos are going to have one of the better defenses in the NFL, if not a top 5, maybe even top 3 unit. I think that's a big key for Bo and his succession as a franchise quarterback. Give him a lot more opportunity.
Those are good points, but you also have the same thing of Jaden Daniels. Can he go out there and do it? Can he replicate what he did last year? CJ Stroud, was last season a fluke with his downplay? Was it really all the offensive coordinator, or was he part of it? Mm-hmm. Jordan Love, well, his play last year wasn't that great. Was that a fluke? Was it injuries? What was that? Mm-hmm. Every quarterback has questions unless you're cemented as one of the top guys, like Josh Allen, like Patrick Mahomes. Every one of them has top guys. So I get where you're coming from with it, and it's definitely a conversation to have. I just look at beyond the quarterback as well. And Washington Commanders actually do have a pretty good roster. I just think Denver matches up really well with them. The Houston Texans have some talent at certain places, especially on defense, but they also have some very glaring weaknesses that the Broncos have the pieces and opportunity to exploit.
Especially
and the Green Bay Packers, their defense is just not good.
Yeah.
And we have Malcolm, is that you saying hello from Homer, Alaska? Or are you back in? Obviously, you're back in Homer if it is you, Malcolm. But it's great to see you in the chat. It's been a while. This guy is a real Knicks hater. That is Lance 100%. What? Real Knicks hater. But anyways, guys.
It was hate. Come on, guys.
But anyways, that's going to have to do it for us. We're going to have to get out of here. We appreciate everybody jumping in and joining us for this conversation and stuff. We will be back next Friday night. But before we get out of here, got to say some matters of business. If you guys are able to do so, you guys can check us out and support us through Super Chat, stars on Facebook and Mile Huddle. But if you can't, of course, as you see scrolling across the ticker, you see subscribe, like, and share. Well, those are 3 ways that you can help us out. That only takes a matter of time, doesn't take any money, and really helps us out with the algorithms. You guys can also go to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and leave a review, which gives you a chance to win some gear, not swag. I hate saying swag every single month. You can follow us on Instagram at Mile High Huddle with an underscore between Mile and High and Huddle, as we're working on building up our Instagram account. If you guys are able to do so and buy some merchandise, and gear, and you can go to mhhmerch.com to get your merchandise or gear on, not swag. Again, I hate saying swag. You guys can get awesome hats like this. The hat that is just the same hat that Lance is wearing, and the shirt. There's also an orange shirt and a bunch of other shirts. There's Broncos for breakfast stuff out there. There's mugs, stuff for every single show. You guys can always look at getting. You guys can follow us on facebook.com/MileHighHuddlePod, facebook.com/MileHighHuddle as well, where you guys can get access to our written content. Speaking of written content, you guys can get access to all of that on Twitter or X, whatever it is you want to call it, at Mile High Huddle, at DVDD_pod, and at MHHpod, where you can get access to all of our stuff there. This is one of the many Mile High Huddle podcasts. We come to you every single day, every single evening of the week, and twice on mornings. And although schedule announcement for the upcoming Broncos for breakfast this week, we will be here Monday morning, and then we won't be back until Thursday morning. So that is something to just keep in mind. It'll be Monday and Thursday this next week, as Nick has some stuff going on. But last, before we get out of here, any final words? That's not hate on Bo Nix.
What is this? Where are you guys coming from with this? At least Mike has my back. Mike Ronquillo jumps in and says that Lance Sanderson, you are not a Bo Nix hater. Thank you, Michael. I've sung a lot of praises about Bo Nix, especially over the last handful of months, but there's still that question mark. I got to see it. I got to see more. I want to see more. And I think he's going to provide a lot more. I really am optimistic about this Broncos team. And if you go back and look, I believe the odds for the Broncos, and like the betting odds have come out, they're favored in 13 games this year. Like that's a big step forward. They were only favored in 4 games coming at this point going into last season. So the Vegas is on the Broncos side. I'm on the Broncos side. I think that 11 wins, that's a good baseline. That's what you should expect from this team. 12, 13 wins, I think they can definitely get there. I really do. I think it's definitely an attainable goal. Give me 11. I want the 11. 1 game worth of improvement for this team from last season. You're going to see that the defense is a lot better. You're going to see some more progression from Bo Nix. At least I didn't say, oh, they're doomed. They're only going to win 7 games. I've done that for the last 7 years. I'm not doing that this year. 11 wins is the baseline. I think that they should get to 11 wins, and that's a playoff berth to me.
All I heard was Bo Nix stinks. That's all I heard out of you.
You guys suck so bad. I hate all of you, especially you, man. Especially you. You're my best friend, but damn it, I hate you sometimes.
I am just teasing. Obviously, Lance isn't a Bo Nix hater. Just teasing him, just making fun of him and everything like that. But we want to thank you guys all for joining in and joining us on this wonderful Friday night. Hope you guys have a wonderful Friday night as well. If you guys are going out to eat or going out on a date, make sure you guys don't drink and drive. Stay safe. Always choose kindness and compassion. Hope you guys have a wonderful night. Go Broncos. And I will see you Monday morning, and we will be back next Friday night, probably talking about some stat predictions.
There we go.